You're listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast with your hosts, Derek Heid and Garrett Lay.
Hello and welcome to AAF Analyzed. I'm your host, Derek Heid, as always, alongside me, Garrett Lay.
Woohoo!
And this is the season preview spectacular. But before we get started, don't forget that if you are listening on YouTube, to like and subscribe. And if you're on Soundcloud, like and give us a follow. Or subscribe and leave us a reply on a few Apple podcasts we have as well. Follow us on Twitter at AAF Analyzed to keep up with the latest news and episode release announcements.
This is going to be a long one today, and I'm even sick for it, so that's awesome. So bear with my voice sometimes. We're going to go through every team's roster as well as other news and our season predictions. So we're going to be putting time stamps in the description so you can find exactly what you're looking for, or you can sit back, relax, and enjoy as you take on a stroll with our voices down at Alliance of American Football Lane. It's very exciting stuff today.
Always well worded. So we're going to start off before we get into our team-specific preview. We'll just go over quick AAF things. I don't exactly know when this happened, but the AAF changed the onside kick.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise.
Exactly. In the preseason games, they changed it from the 4th and 10 on the 35. It's now a 4th and 12 from your own 28. So that really, it makes it riskier to go for that onside kick. And it makes it harder because it's an extra 2 yards to gain.
Yeah, I think, didn't some teams convert it relatively easily? The 4th and 10 one or whatever. So I'm sure they took that into consideration.
There was one of the training camp games, drawing a blank on which one it is particular. I want to say it was the Commanders game. One of the teams in it had converted 2 of them, and it just made them want to change it.
Yeah, no, I don't blame them. It needs to be a really difficult thing. It needs to be exciting and possible to convert, but it needs to be difficult as well. In other exciting news, the Alliance of American Football and NFL Network today announced a multi-year programming deal that will include live event coverage of the Alliance inaugural season, which I think this is the perfect statement to how this is not a competing league with the NFL. The NFL is literally willing to spend their time and money to broadcast it, so I think that's awesome. NFL Network's going to debut their Alliance coverage with the Salt Lake Stallions at the Arizona Hotshots on Sunday, February 10th at 8 p.m.
So, opening weekend, 2 major games. First one on CBS, second one on NFL Network.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. They're also going to be streaming on CBS Sports, of course, and Bleacher Report Live, and 1 game on TNT. So, yeah, it's all over the place.
Another Stallions game.
But they're really making sure that the AAF gets to as many eyeballs as possible, which I think is just excellent for the Alliance.
Yeah. The 2 main people streaming will be CBS Sports and NFL Network. So if you're trying to get your AAF dosage, those will be the 2 main places to check first. But the AAF just posted every single game and what they'll be covered by on Instagram. So definitely go and check that out if you're looking for your team.
All right, so that's kind of the basic news, some of the new developments in the AAF. So you want to go ahead and kick off our roster analysis, which is
let's go for
maybe the most exciting part here. So I'll start off talking about the San Diego Fleet. They have one of the biggest fan bases so far. There's 3 podcasts about them, and they're really blowing up. So at quarterback for the Fleet, Josh Johnson was supposed to be the quarterback, and he was picked as their protected QB in the first pick of the QB draft for the AAF. But he might not return to the QB position for the Fleet. The Redskins are really trying to...
Fleet to probably not.
Yeah, probably not, because really things don't look too great. With Alex Smith being done for the whole year for the Redskins next year, they're going to really try to sign Johnson again, and he's dealing with an ankle injury right now. So things aren't looking great for the Fleet in terms of Johnson being their quarterback. So the next quarterback that I looked at was Michael Bercovici. He was the Fleet's second selection in the quarterback draft after Johnson, and he played at ASU and had a pretty solid career with 42 touchdowns, 13 picks, and a 60% completion percentage. He's played on some practice squads but hasn't gotten any NFL playing time. But he looks to be in the position to be a starter for the Fleet. So now on to running back. The biggest surprise that Bishop Sankey wasn't on the roster, and people were freaking out. But it turns out he's just on IR, and he will be playing for the Fleet this year. So when he gets back, look for their run game to get pretty explosives. But in the meantime, Terrell Watson is the running back that's going to be filling his spot. He has an NFL rushing TD, so that's fun. And he was an absolute monster in college at Azusa Pacific. That's where Christian Okoye played, which Okoye. Oh, sorry. And he was really good, and he actually broke all of Okoye's records while at school there. He's big, powerful runner at 6'1" and 242, which is about the size of Derrick Henry, so he's going to be a real bruiser. Wide receiver now, we got Dontez Ford out of Pitt. Hail to Pitt. He was signed as a free agent with the Lions in 2018, but he got cut, and he has great physicality. Cameron Kelly originally played defensive back in college at San Diego State. He's some local talent coming into San Diego. He's on the roster as a wide receiver, though, so he's going to bring some natural instincts to the table since he played as defensive back, so he knows what wide receivers are trying to do. They have some really good size at wide receiver overall, which seems to be what they focused on, but there is Laquavante Gonzalez, who posted a 4.36 40-yard dash time in college. So look for him to be elusive and really one of their big play potential players.
Blazing speed.
Tight end, we got a bunch of really good catching tight ends like Marcus Baugh and Gavin Escobar. Escobar you might have heard because he played in the NFL and he has 8 touchdowns. But the big thing for the Fleet is their tight ends really struggle with blocking. So they're going to that running game may suffer a little bit if their offensive line isn't totally there because their tight ends are great athletes going down the field, but blocking, they struggle there a little bit. Speaking of the offensive line, they do have a number 2 ranked offensive tackle going into the 2015 CFL draft, so he was supposed to be really, really good in the CFL, so he might be a strong anchor there. Another Pitt guy, Brandon Hodges, is going to start at right tackle. Or that's where he started at Pitt. And there's Terry Poole as well, who got to play for the Seahawks, but only on the practice squad. And then offensive guard, you got Daryl Green, Chris Gonzalez, and Damian Mama from USC and San Jose, so some local talent there as well. And they only have one center technically on the roster, but I'm sure they'll be able to move guards in and see who plays what position best. Now for the defense here, we got a D-end, which they have more D-ends than a lot of other teams. As we'll see when we look at the rosters, teams are really trying something different in the AAF. But they have some huge defensive ends here. Their first one, Miles Nash, he played at Rutgers as a tight end, but he's 6'5", 257, and he's big enough to be a DE. So it'll be interesting to see how he transitions there. DeMontre Moore is really interesting. He was actually projected to be a top 12 pick in the 2012 NFL draft, but a poor combine performance hurt his stock, so look for him to bounce back from this and play a big role in the D-line. D-tackle, they have some big guys up front there. Another Pitt guy as well, Shakir Soto. He was looked at by multiple NFL teams, and he's looking to use the AAF opportunity to catch their eye. At linebacker, they have A.J. Tarpley. He played for the Bills, and he played in 15 games in 2015 and has 2 picks. He could end up being a ball hawk there at linebacker. And then their defensive backs just overall, they have great size at safety, with all of them being over 6 foot and 200 pounds. So they could really light some people up. And Jude Adeji Barima is a cornerback who has some NFL experience, so he might bring some leadership to that defensive back core.
Yeah, definitely some really great players for San Diego. I really like that overview you did. So let's just do a quick thing. We'll do this for all the teams. Garrett, give me your biggest strength and weakness for the Fleet.
So I think the Fleet's biggest weakness is probably going to be that quarterback position, just because they really have no idea what's going on yet. And I think it's going to be hard to start off the season with such uncertainty at quarterback. But I think their biggest advantage is going to be that defensive end. I think having a projected top 12 pick from the draft, I'm sure he's been working on those combine skills, and I bet he's a monster.
Yeah, definitely. Another one of the weaknesses you pointed out a little bit beforehand, definitely the tight ends, all being receiving tight ends. I'm sure the quarterback loves it, but your running backs, they're not going to like that nearly as much, as they might get pummeled a little bit. But we will definitely see how it goes with the Fleet. Definitely hoping the best for them. Let's keep moving down through the West. We're going to go on to the next team in the West, Salt Lake. Garrett, take it away.
Actually, it is the Hotshots. That's who we're talking about next.
Oh, is it? Oh, it is.
Yeah, it is the Hotshots. Okay,
Whoops.
so talking about the Hotshots here, I like their name a lot personally, and I think Arizona's a cool state, but that's just my opinion, I guess. Quarterback, they're rocking Trevor Knight. He was the Hotshots' first pick in the quarterback draft, and he seems to be the favorite to start the season under center. He was a starting quarterback at Oklahoma and was MVP of the Sugar Bowl, but lost the starting spot to Baker Mayfield, who we know is pretty good. So that's definitely not a knock on Knight there. So he looks to regain his role after being on the Arizona Cardinals practice squad. He's probably going to be a great quarterback. At running back, we have Tim Cook. He's a big power back, 6 foot, 245. Sterling Moore played in the NFL for 7 whole years, all as a cornerback, and now he's transitioned to running back, which is interesting. And then Jarrell Presley, he's going to bring really good speed. He posted a 4.38 at the 40-yard dash in 2016, and he has a 106-yard kick return in the NFL. So he might be a big playmaker there. Wide receiver, we have Marquise Bundy. He brings excellent size, 6'5", 220. So really look for him in the end zone. That's a massive wide receiver. Josh Huff, some of you may recognize that name. He played for the Eagles. He was drafted in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, and he also holds the longest play in Eagles history. So he has a kick return touchdown. I think it was 107 yards.
Wow.
Unfortunately for him, he got in trouble with the law when he was in the NFL, and it set him back, but I'm sure he's going to be hungry for this opportunity in the AAF. And another wide receiver with the NFL kick return touchdown is Rashad Ross. So they have 3 players on their team that have kick return touchdowns, so they can make some huge plays. They have a very solid offensive line, a ton of really big guys, so they're probably going to create great, solid running lanes for both the power backs and the speedsters. At defensive end, we have Olumbunmi Rotimi, which is very fun to say. He's a powerful rusher who is invited to the NFL Combine and received a grade of 5.03, which is solid, particularly for someone who played on practice squads and is now in the AAF. Rakeem Yates has some experience. He played in the CFL. Defensive tackles. There's 4 defensive tackles compared to the 2 defensive ends. So look at the Hotshots to try to stuff the run and use linebackers in a lot of the blitz packages. Like I said earlier, this is going to be something we see a lot of from a lot of these AAF teams. They're going to be using a lot of linebackers, it seems, in their blitz packages. Speaking of linebackers, they have Kalen Burnett, one of the older players with CFL experience. Deshaun Downey, he was signed by the Ravens as defensive end, so of course he'll probably play a role in the pass rush. Steven Johnson has a great nose for special teams, and look for him to make plays there. And Scooby Wright III, if he still has his flair from college, look for him to make a serious impact, as he was a unanimous All-American and the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year while at Arizona. So I'm sure he's gotten a ton of experience as he's grown older, so look for him to make some big plays.
Yeah, I remember him coming into the draft that year, and he was definitely a really big playmaker, and I definitely could see him doing some great things for the Hotshots.
Now on to defensive backs, we have Eric Dargan. He has some CFL experience. Dexter McDougal, another very fun name, played some time in the NFL, and his experience covered big receivers despite his height. I believe he's like 5'11 or 5'10. So he's a very physical DB. Raheem Moore is a player with extensive NFL experience, playing in 64 games over 4 years with the Broncos and Texans. He was even a second-round pick in the NFL draft in 2011. And overall, I think if we're moving to like the strengths of the Hotshots here, I think their biggest strength right now is their defensive backs. These are all really experienced guys. I think that could be a game changer against some of the less experienced wide receivers they have to play.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the roster, I'm a big quarterback guy. You knew it was coming. Trevor Knight has to be one of the best quarterbacks within the AAF. We talked about him losing his job to Baker Mayfield. Mayfield won the Heisman. But even so, Knight was a 2,000-yard. He threw for 2,000 yards with Oklahoma. He threw for another 2,000 at Texas A&M. He had a couple of injury issues whenever he was in college, but I could definitely see him picking it up and playing some great ball for the Hotshots. Not to mention that he could be a pretty mobile quarterback too. Whenever he was in college, he ran a 4.54 40, and there's been a couple of articles coming out about his mobility within the pocket.
Yeah, he sounds great. I did forget to mention one very interesting fact from the Hotshots. Their tight end, Jared Christian, was drafted as Mr. Irrelevant in the 2015 NFL Draft. So that's if you look at his Wikipedia page, that's his one accolade, which is kind of sad, but I think he might be able to put on a show.
Oh, you get a free jersey out of that.
I know.
From the commissioner.
Yeah.
It's a great time. They also have Nick Folk at kicker. Really great things there. Nick Folk's definitely impressed in the NFL, and I'm sure he can impress again in the AAF.
Yeah. So you want to go ahead and head over to the Salt Lake Stallions. That's all you do.
Absolutely. We're going to the furthest north team in the AAF, the only one that's actually not in the South. So the Stallions quarterback most likely is going to be Josh Woodrum. After signing with the Giants as an undrafted free agent in 2016, Woodrum bounced around the NFL a couple of times before the Ravens cut him right before the start of the 2018 regular season. It marked the sixth team that let him go. He never played a regular season snap, but as a four-year starting quarterback in college, Woodrum led his team to 3 straight Big South Conference football championships with Liberty University. And the Stallions' second-round draft pick, B.J. Daniels, was not able to make the final roster, so it appears that the first selection, Josh Woodrum, should have the starting job. And he's definitely a good one at that. Running back, one of the more notable names in the AAF, Matt Asiata, former Utah star, coming back to his college's stadium to play for the Stallions. Although he's not really the fastest runner, he only put up a 4.77.40 at his college combine, but he still has 5 years and 74 games of experience on the Vikings roster, over 2,000 total yards and 19 touchdowns. So it doesn't seem like that speed held him back in the NFL.
No, absolutely. He's going to bring some nice experience to that backfield.
Yeah. In the wide receiver, one of the guys I really liked to look at was Kenny Bell. He's legendary across Nebraska Cornhusker Nation. While at Nebraska, he set a number of school records. He played in 53 games. He had 2,689 receiving yards, 109 rushing yards, and 22 total touchdowns. He was a fifth-round draft pick. He was described by scouts as lanky, a vertical wide receiver with a second gear, and he likes to lull cornerbacks to sleep before hitting the gas and getting them over for big plays. And he spent a lot of time in the Ravens practice squad with Josh Woodrum, which could make for a deadly combo in the AAF already.
That will be nice, because Woodrum has it. I know connections between quarterback and wide receiver are extremely important in making a great wide receiver and a great quarterback, so that could really turn into something special.
Absolutely. Dress Anderson, Kalen Clay, Jordan Leslie, all other wide receivers for the Stallions, they have over 3 years of NFL experience, yet Jordan Anderson is the only player with stats, and that's only one catch for 26 yards. A lot of practice squad time. Tight ends, Anthony Denham signed with the Houston Texans as an undrafted free agent in 2014. Later, Denham finished playing with the Philadelphia Eagles for a few games in the 2018 season. And Nick Truesdale is a 6'5", 246-pound tight end. And this isn't a tight end you want to mess with. He also played arena football for 3 years, got over 1,500 yards and 38 touchdowns.
Those arena football players are scary.
The stats are a little bit inflated because arena football, the field's really small.
Yeah.
It's tough because it's so small.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the defense, there's a couple of interesting things that I noticed here. There's only one listed defensive end on the roster. His name's Carl Schultz. He briefly played for the Panthers and the Browns. But there's only one D end and 4 listed defensive tackles. So you have to imagine that the Stallions are going to be playing to dominate the line of scrimmage more so than try and rush off the edge.
Yeah.
Tenny Palapoy and Silver Siliga, I really butchered those names. They're 2 more of the Utah players on the roster. They have 10 of them total. So if you want to talk about hometown players, they play at the University of Utah Stadium, and there's 10 of them on the roster.
That was another common theme for these AAF teams. A lot of the guys are local talent that these coaches have really gotten a chance to see. So it makes it really fun, particularly if you live in an AAF city. So you can root for guys who you might have heard of your entire life.
Yeah, just going through the linebacker, Gianni Paul was he was a linebacker. He played in Salt Lake City, and he earned first-team All-Pac-12 honors when he was in college. Anthony Williams was a boxer until age 16, and then he switched over to linebacker. So you got to imagine he's a tough guy. And when you look at the defensive backs, 6 out of the 7 of them have experience in the NFL. So you got to think that this is a great defense that the Stallions have working for them.
Oh, yeah, I think this Stallions defense is going to be one of their biggest strengths, as well as Kenny Bell and Josh Woodrum connection. I think they're going to be a really, really good team. But
Yeah, I really agree with you there. I think the biggest strength will be the defense, but one of the big weaknesses that I see is that they're choosing size over speed in a lot of cases. 6'5" defensive or tight ends. They have a lot of really big defensive players. They have their running back, Matt Asiata, only ran a 4.77 at his pro day. It's just, I feel like they're kind of giving up speed a little bit for size.
yeah, okay. I hear that.
All right, and with that, we're going to continue on in the West to the San Antonio Commanders. Another one of those really great teams that they have here. Their GM, Daryl Johnson, has been giving us a ton of quotes about how good this team is because he thinks that they're the best team in the AAF so far.
He's confident, which I
love
like
the
to see from a
confidence.
coach.
At quarterback, they have Dustin Vaughn. Vaughn was the 4th pick in the QB draft, and he led the way for the Commanders' offense for a majority of the training camp. He took most of the first-team reps in Matt Troxell's offense. He would be the OC. From the get-go, the West Texas A&M product displayed confidence and poise inside the pocket, and there's a really awesome picture of him in the pocket in his game against Atlanta, the preseason game.
Hey, like I said last episode, the photographers for the AAF are stellar. So if you do one thing, follow the AAF on Instagram, and follow, of course, AAF Analyzed on Twitter. But AAF on Instagram, they post some spectacular pictures.
Love to get the plug in there.
Yeah.
Running back, though, they have a relatively small group of running backs. The 4 that made the roster, David Cobb, Kenneth Farrow, Aaron Green, and Trey Williams. No one's taller than 5'11", and Trey Williams, for instance, is only 5'7".
Yeah, but who knows? We could have 4 Darren Sproles on our hands, and that would be a lot for other teams to handle.
David Cobb is a former 5th-round pick by the Titans and had over 3,000 all-purpose yards and 20 touchdowns in college. And he started in the scrimmage against Atlanta and scored an impressive power touchdown where they said he got stuffed at the line, was able to find a hole later in the play, broke out, and got in. And of the 4, only Aaron Green has ever gotten a rush in the NFL, has never gotten a rush in the NFL. Trey Green had 2. Cobb and Farrow both had over 50, so they have NFL experience on that team. At wide receiver, Josh Stewart is a 6'4" wide receiver. He's huge, known for his larger frame and wide catch radius. And his unique style made a mark working as a boundary wide receiver and a red zone threat for the Commanders' offense. And he was a highlight of the UTSA offense because he had 75 completions and 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns over the years he was there with one of the quarterbacks who was on the Commanders' roster until cut day. Greg Ward is another wide receiver now, but he was once a quarterback at the University of Houston, where he played a really vital role in 2015, helping the Cougars turn into one of the top programs, starting to get 5-star prospects like Ed Oliver will be going to the NFL draft. But since the transition from quarterback to wide receiver, he could be one of the next big players to switch.
I like to see these guys switching positions. I think it's fun. I think it can do wonders for their career because I don't want to say they aren't good enough at their position, but I think sometimes they could take advantage of their other athletic abilities to really shine in a different position.
Yeah, definitely. DeMarcus Ayers, John Diarse, and Mikhail McKay, who is 6'5", 206. They had fantastic training camps and could very well be the go-to targets for the Commanders. And at tight end, Cam Clear, he was spending a lot of time bulking up to try and play offensive line, but the Commanders stuck him at tight end. And he is 6'6", 277, and he's just going to be a force on the outside.
That's a big dude.
And there's a great picture of him, and he's bigger than every linebacker covering him. I'd be scared. At the defensive line, in a really weird move, the Commanders only kept 4 total defensive linemen on the roster, and only one player, Winston Craig, is listed as something other than defensive line. So whenever you look at the intangibles of all the D linemen, every player is either 6'4" or over 300 pounds. So it would be hard for me to imagine any of these players being able to be very effective off the edge, which leads into the linebackers. The Commanders left 10 total linebackers on the roster, so you got to think that there's a lot of speed there.
Yeah.
So you really got to think that the Commanders are going to play a lot of defensive schemes with very little linemen. It would rather scheme to have their linebackers rushing off the edge. So I'm saying 3-4 defense for the Commanders. Joel Lanning is another linebacker who was once a quarterback. He threw for
Look at
1,200
that.
yards, rushed for 330, and accounted for 14 total touchdowns for Iowa State. And now he's switched to inside linebacker, and he's a really, really high IQ guy. Great pickup for the Commanders. And Nick Temple, although his size might not allow him to become an elite pass rusher, there's been a couple of articles saying that he's got great coverage and he's had a lot of interceptions over the Commanders' quarterbacks. And the defensive backs, everyone says that the star of the defensive backs for the Commanders is the safeties. They performed really well in their team drills. They had some excellent concentration, a lot of interceptions. A couple of guys to look out for would be free safety Deron Smith from Fresno, Jordan Thomas from Oklahoma, and Orion Stewart from Baylor. Really great players. And, of course, Nick Rose is the kicker, another NFL name you've probably heard of.
I got to say, I think their strength looks to be at that middle linebacker position. I think having a quarterback who now plays middle linebacker is really going to help him with that field general aspect because he's literally the quarterback of the defense. I think that's going to bring great things to that defense there.
Yeah, I think he really knows what he's doing. He's going to be able to read a quarterback better than most normal linebackers could. And even if he's not on the field for every play, you can definitely relay that information over to his teammates.
Sounds good.
Biggest strength for the Commanders, though, I love Dustin Vaughn. I really think he's going to be a great person, great player in the league. And he's one of those quarterbacks. He's one of 3 in the league, Aaron Murray, himself, and Trevor Knight, that have really been the starting quarterback for their team from the second they were drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's always a big advantage.
I really think that's saying that they got something special there.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the East now. We got 4 more teams in the East here. And, Derek, you did the research, so go ahead and take it away with the Memphis Express.
All right, starting with the Express in the East. The 4-man race for quarterback seems to be nearing its end with a strong performance from Christian Hackenberg against the Stallions. Penn State product was 9 of 15 for 128 yards passing and 1 touchdown. So it looked like at the last possible second, Hackenberg stole the job from Christian Mettenberger, or Zach Mettenberger, not Christian Mettenberger. My apologies. And they cut the number 3 overall pick in the draft, Troy Cook, who was their first-round pick, and he was taken above people like Trevor Knight and Dustin Vaughn. But Troy Cook not able to make the final roster for the Express, and it looks from the Express team reporter, it is Hackenberg's job to lose, end quote. In the running backs, the Express offense only totaled 53 rushing yards on 28 carries against Salt Lake,
That's
though.
not great.
And the running back, Rajon Neal, did a majority of the work with 7 carries for 47 yards.
That's actually pretty solid.
Yeah. So the offense will need to be more consistent with production from the running backs during the regular season. But with 87% of your team's rushing yards in the preseason game from one player, I think it's pretty safe to say that Neal will probably be the starter.
And they took another 21 carries besides his 7, and they only were able to get,
6 yards.
6 other yards. So they're really going to have to work on that before game time comes.
Yeah, and it does go without saying that Zach Stacy, the former St. Louis Ram with over 1,200 career yards and 10 touchdowns, is still on the Express roster, though. So they have talent at running back, so this is either saying that the talent we think that they have at running back either isn't there or the Stallions' defense is just that good.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. When we talk about the Stallions' defense, I'm pretty high on them. So I do like that defense. And so I really don't know if it's a knock against the Express or a knock for the Stallions there. But I'm excited to see what happens during the season.
We'll have to wait till the regular season to figure out which one it is. Wide receivers, this is a really tall group of receivers the Express have. We're only 1 player shorter than 5'11", and the tallest is 6'6".
Oof.
Wide receiver Fabian Guerrera he continued to have a strong training camp. The wide receiver born in Miami hauled in a couple of one-handed catches throughout all of training camp. And Devin Lucien was a part of the New England Patriots organization that ended up winning a Super Bowl in Super Bowl 51. At tight end, they got Adrian Robinson, who I think they will start. Former first-round pick by the Giants. He had 5 catches in the NFL, one of which was for a TD.
That's production.
So he's got a pretty good touchdown or catch-to-touchdown ratio. However, offensive line, head coach Mike Singletary pointed out after practice that it takes time for the offensive line to be on the same page but the unit is well on its way to living up to its potential. So it looks like they've been having some offensive line struggles there in Memphis. And
yeah, I mean that can also account for that poor running back performance. So once again, like we said, we're really gonna have to wait till game time to see what's up there.
Exactly. He said that he's seen some really great things. They got great potential, but we'll have to wait and see if they can reach that potential, and maybe, just maybe, that can make the running backs do that much better. If you look on the defensive side, I'm going to go back to this preseason game that they had against the Stallions. The Stallions rushed for 155 yards on 38 carries with 2 touchdowns against this Express defense. They averaged 4.1 yards per rush. And head coach Mike Singletary emphasized the alignment and positioning when the defense was on, and that point will be stressed even more going forward into the season.
Oh, yeah, I think these lines might be an issue for the Express. If they can get them under control before the season starts, good on them, but I think these might be a problem for the whole year.
Absolutely. Even throughout the 155-yard performance by the Stallions, some defensive linemen to look out for. Anthony Johnson, he led the Express defensive line, established itself as a great part of their camp, strongest position group on the team, according to their team reporter. Anthony Johnson, Chris Weatherd, Sam Montgomery, and Jamichael Winston all had strong performances on the defensive line and kept constant pressure in the Salt Lake City backfield for them. And linebackers, Mike Singletary is a Hall of Fame linebacker himself, and everybody was looking to the Express to show up, and boy did they. Davis Tull had the lone sack of the game for the Express defense, taking down Stallions quarterback B.J. Daniels in the second quarter, and Colton Jumper had 4 tackles, including 1 for a loss. Dale Warren had two solo tackles, 3 overall. And on special teams, Quentin Goss blocked a third-quarter punt to give his offense excellent field position. Defensive back, the Express decided to keep 9 defensive backs, which is a lot compared to some of the other AAF teams. All around, it's the secondary that lacks a lot of size, though. 2 players are 5'9", only 1 is over 202 pounds. This lack of size could be a potential problem when playing some of those really tall receivers in the AAF.
Yeah, we've talked about some huge receivers, and I think they might struggle. I mean, I did talk about, I think it was the one Stallions cornerback who has great physicality, so they're really the smaller players are really going to have to step up to shut down these dudes who are like 6'6".
Absolutely. A lot of good things to look out for this team, though. They have a really tall group of receivers who would do well against a defensive back like their own, which is really small. But one of the big weaknesses to look out for is, I was looking up and down this roster, and there is no kicker on the Memphis Express. They have a punter in Brad Wing, and over his college and professional career, he's never attempted a field goal, so I have no idea who's kicking for this team.
I'm sure with our luck, they'll announce the kicker like right after we're done recording this or whatever.
That's probably true.
But make sure you kind of stay updated there, because we will be interested to see who's kicking for
Maybe we'll
Express
tweet out
here
at the Express and ask them who the heck is kicking.
Yeah, we can do that. Or I'll maybe retweet something if they do announce the kicker.
Will do.
Remember, follow AAF Analyzed on Twitter. Okay, so moving on to the Birmingham Iron. I actually like them a lot. We have at quarterback Luis Perez. He was drafted by the Iron as the 5th pick in the quarterback draft. He's an extremely hard worker who has been playing with a chip on his shoulder and is very excited to lead his new team to great heights. He's like one of the best Division II quarterbacks of all time. So I think it's really exciting to see him step up to this next level, and I think he's going to be able to do great things. Of course, at running back, perhaps one of the biggest names in the AAF, Trent Richardson, one of the most well-known names. He's a former first-round draft pick in the NFL, and unfortunately he ended up being a bust, but he's going to be a menace in the AAF field with tons of NFL experience and a hunger to be great again.
Yeah, he had great physicals at the Combine, which made him be the 3rd pick in the NFL draft, and it goes without saying that he's definitely got the physical talent. You just kind of hope he can hang in there.
Absolutely. So at wide receiver, we have Amba Edetawo. He's going to bring some serious speed. He posted a 4.35 40 at Syracuse's Pro Day in 2016, and he's 6'1". So that's going to be a solid combo of size and speed at wide receiver for the Iron. They're a little smaller overall at wide receiver, but the 6'4" LaDamian Washington should serve as a big target in the red zone. They have big tight ends who will probably be used in blocking for Richardson. I have a feeling they're going to really build this team around Richardson here.
Okay.
Once again, talking about that, we have the O-line. It's almost all Alabama players, which is smart because, as we know, Alabama has always had a very dominant offensive line. They're heavy
true.
on those players. It's a smart move. They do their jobs. They do them well. The other guy, offensive lineman Brandon Green, he's a little bit smaller. He played a lot of tight end in college at Alabama, another Alabama guy. So look for him to be a blocker for outside runs, playing that like the tight end position of blocking.
Mm-hmm.
We got D-line. The Iron went with size on that D-line. No one's under 300 pounds. And we'll most likely focus on rushing with the linebackers, just like we've pretty much said for every other team here.
Yeah. A lot of focus on linebackers for just about every team. It's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah. Xavier Dixon, which I love how he spells his name. It's not just X and then A-V-I-E-R. It's X-Z-A-V-I-E-R, which I think is awesome.
That way you know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it helps. And he's a big, powerful linebacker with excellent pass rushing abilities. And he logged 9 sacks in his last season at Alabama, another Alabama product. So one linebacker, Shaheed Salmon, he went to Lando Lakes High School, so hopefully he doesn't have butterfingers when going up for picks.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I had to get that in there. Defensive backs, Chris Davis, he returned the field goal against Bama. He's a baller.
Davis.
So I hope the Alabama players that he plays with forgives him. He's, of course, out of Auburn. And they have DBs who can play all over the field. They can force sacks, force fumbles, kick returns, and expect to see it all from them. And then at kicker, they have Nick Novak, a well-known NFL kicker. And at punter, they have Colton Schmidt, who played for the Bills for a little while and then got hurt and cut. But he's now making a return in the AAF.
Yep, definitely some great talent with the Iron. Love the Chris Davis call. You got to think that just from watching that one Iron Bowl, Chris Davis has to be a great kick returner and a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
Garrett, biggest upside for the Iron?
Upside, I think it's going to be that running back and offensive line.
All right.
As well as the leadership of Luis Perez. And particularly since I feel like he's going to get a lot of time in the pocket with that offensive line. I think that's their biggest thing. Biggest weakness, I'd say, is probably that being smaller at wide receiver.
Okay.
But I think they should be able to make it work.
Yep. All right, definitely. Let's keep it going through the East. Next up, we have the Atlanta Legends. Garrett, that one's also yours, so go on, take it away.
All right, here we go. Atlanta Legends at quarterback. We have Aaron Murray. He's, of course, out of Georgia, and he looks to be the lead signal caller for this Legends team. The Legends protected him with their second pick in the quarterback draft, and he shattered all sorts of SEC records in college, so look for him to be one of the most dominant quarterbacks in the league. The coaches did see a solid group of quarterbacks, though, so things may change over the course of the season, and I feel like the Legends can feel safe if Aaron Murray were to go down with an injury for a few games or something.
Yeah,
but Murray should be in that starting position.
Yeah, I definitely just want to reiterate, through all of camp, those 3 great quarterbacks, Trevor Knight, Aaron Murray, Dustin Vaughn, and he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
So now on to running back. They have great depth at running back, and they're going to be looking to use a trio of Taron Folston, Denard Shoelace Robinson. Some of you may remember him from Michigan. Watch for him to bring serious quickness to the backfield, and as well as Akram Wadley. He's a stellar running back from Iowa who did attend the Combine and had a great score there for the NFL. And he's going to bring playmaking ability to the backfield. And I think those 3, they're really elusive guys, and I'm looking to see them break some really big runs. At wide receiver, we have Bug Howard, which he has a great nickname, and he's also massive.
So why is he called Bug?
That's what his grandma called him when he was a kid, and now he goes by Bug. Wide receiver, we have another wide receiver here, Justin Thomas. He ran an unofficial 4.37 40 in 2017, so he has some speed there. And they really have a solid combination of size and speed at receiver that will help them have the right players for any situation. Tight end, they have Garrett Hudson. He followed me on Instagram for a while and then unfollowed me, but I don't hold a grudge.
Followed me too.
I know, and then he unfollowed both of us, which hurt a little bit, but I think he's going to be an excellent tight end. Offensive line, John Kling IV. He played for the Redskins, and his Twitter Insta name is Kling Kong, and he's massive. So we'll look to anchor that offensive line that will be working to create holes and block for the playmakers that Atlanta has in their backfield, as well as blocking for that excellent quarterback in Aaron Murray. Now on D-line, they have some good NFL experience on D-line with Tavares Barnes and TJ Barnes, amazingly no relation, playing multiple games during the NFL regular season. There's Tracy Sprinkle. Don't be fooled by his name. This OSU defensive tackle is a force to be reckoned with a lot to prove. And they have great run stuffers in the middle of their line.
All right.
At linebacker, look for Khalil Bass to be a leader among the linebacker corps with 3 solid years of CFL experience under his belt. And Brandon Watts brings NFL experience after playing with the Dolphins from 2014 to 2015. And then defensive backs, Desmond Lawrence plays wide receiver in the NFL. So look for him to have great hands after transitioning to defensive back and wide receiver-like instincts. So he's really going to make plays on the ball. Quincy Moshay will bring some local talent coming from UGA. And Damian Swan is another dog looking for a second chance. After suffering 3 concussions in 9 weeks while on the Saints, he was waived. But after his break, he looks to come back strong. And then on special teams, we have a well-known kicker, Young Ho Koo, who you might have heard of in the NFL.
Young Ho Koo, there was a video of him on, I think, the AAF Instagram, where he just casually hit like a 55-yard field goal at training camp.
Yeah, there's actually some pretty exciting kickers in this league.
Oh, yeah. Definitely one of the great things to watch out for. Garrett, biggest upside, weakness?
It's going to have to be that quarterback, Aaron Murray. You look for him to do great things. I think weakness, this feels like one of the stronger teams in the AAF to me. I didn't see much on their linebackers, though, which is strange because all of the other teams have really strong linebackers. So their linebacker core might be a little weak, but other than that, I think they're going to be an excellent team.
All right, definitely some great analysis there. And time for the final team to go over, the last team in the East, Orlando Apollos, coached by Steve Spurrier, one of the College Football Hall of Famers. I think he'll be one of the best, if not the best coach in the AAF. And for the offense, at quarterback, after the dust settled, the team said goodbye to Morris, and that was something of a surprise that many of the Apollos reporters thought that they would keep him since he was the second-round pick, but he was the last to fall, and he had the most NFL experience out of the 4 they kept. But
That's
it looks like
surprising.
Garrett Gilbert will be the Apollos Week 1 starter with with Appleby and Anderson backing him up. Garrett Gilbert was a first-round selection by the Apollos, and he's expected to start in the nationally televised season opener versus Atlanta. Make sure you're watching that on CBS on the 9th.
February 9th, baby.
Gilbert was a 6th-round selection by the Rams in 2014, Super Bowl champion with the Patriots in 2015, and former Mr. Texas Football, best high school football player in Texas if you're not familiar with the award. He definitely looks like a really solid quarterback, but I wasn't willing to put him in the top 3 yet because we haven't seen much of him.
Yeah, that's fair.
At running back, Akeem Hunt looks to be the favorite to start at running back for the Apollos, and the backups are anyone's guess at this point. But Akeem Hunt, he's a former Texans and Chiefs player. He has 327 total yards over 3 seasons and amounted 824 return yards. So he could be in line to be the returner for the Apollos, also come the season opener. Hunt was also listed as one of the players with great speed for the team. He ran a 4.40 and a 4.36 at his college pro day, and I can only imagine he's gotten faster.
That's wicked fast, yeah.
One of the biggest things to look out on this Apollos team is the speed. They have a ton of players that are running like sub 4.5s.
That's solid.
And speaking of the speed, going over to wide receiver, Marvin Bracey Williams Jr. is a former Olympic sprinter.
He's
playing wide receiver for them. Ishmael Hyman ran a 4.39 at his college pro day. He's another wide receiver, and he's 6 feet tall. Another one of those great size and speed combinations that he has, and he's got a lot of potential to be successful. At tight end, Sean Price, Matt Weiser, and Scott Orndorff, Pitt player, all bounced off and on multiple NFL practice squads, so they have plenty of translatable experience. I wasn't able to see who would be the starter come week 1, but we will see.
Yeah.
And for the offensive line, as true in just about all brands of American football, one of the greatest keys to success is a great offensive line and a great one that can block at that. And the Apollos offensive line has played better lately, but it still has a little bit of work to do before the regular season, as does everyone now.
Yeah.
We're talking about that speed in the offense, and that speed translates to the defense too. Defensive backs Ladarius Gunter and Cody Riggs have exceptional speed, as do outside linebackers Earl O'Keen and Jacob Pugh, as do pass rushers off the edge. And there's, as I said, there's a ton of speed here. But they still have a really large defensive line. The shortest player on the defensive line is 6'3", but Isaiah Burks is over 300 pounds. And the lightest player on the team is 264 pounds, and he's 6'7".
There's some really big dudes in the AAF. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I was just telling you how fast they are too. And they're huge guys.
It's scary.
So that size-speed combo could prove for a really deadly defensive line. The Apollo's team reporter was constantly talking about how great this front seven is and how easily they can get into the backfield of offenses. So I think that this defense is definitely going to be something to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
And another note on the size, the shortest linebacker on the final roster is only 6'1". And there's a reason this front seven appears to be deadly. It's that size and speed combination, because they're both two major upsides and they're killers when they're together. And the defensive backs aren't nearly as large, but they do come in with some great players. I talked about the ones earlier. Will Hill, in just 2 seasons with the Ravens, he has 220 tackles, 3 defensive touchdowns, and I think he'll be a force for Aaron Murray to look out for come February 9th.
Sounds good.
I really like this Apollos team. I'm telling you, that upside's got to be the size and speed.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes them sound dangerous.
Yeah. Weakness, if any, would have to be the offensive line. There's not much on them, and there's been a couple of quotes from Spurrier saying that they got to pick it up before the 9th, but I'm sure that Spurrier, with his coaching experience, should be able to get that done.
Sounds good. So my voice is really starting to go here because of this sickness. So let's get into these.
Left.
Let's get into these way too early season predictions. These are way too early. We haven't even seen any of these teams play real games, but hey, it's fun. We're probably totally wrong about every single team, but who knows? If we're right, it's going to be very impressive, and the AAF should hire us immediately. Anyway, so for my predictions, I think coming in the number 1 spot in the West, I think this is bold, but I really like them. I think it's going to be the Stallions. They weren't really heavily reported on during the offseason, but they really seem to be rounding out to be an excellent team. With offensive playmakers and what looks to be fantastic lines on both sides of the ball, the Stallions are poised to do great things. Number 2, I got the Commanders coming in. They're an incredibly well-rounded team, and they look like they're going to be able to make some serious plays on both sides of the ball. Coming in a close third to the Commanders, this was kind of like really up in the air for me. The Hotshots, they had a pretty rough offseason, but the Hotshots have really gotten it together, and they have great playmakers at wide receiver and running back, as well as talented linebackers, and they should really be able to hold their own. And finally, coming in last for me in the West at number 4 is the Fleet. I think the uncertainty at quarterback might hurt them at the beginning of the season and put them in a hole that's hard to escape. And I just didn't see as many playmakers on their roster as I did on a lot of the other teams in the West.
All right. We'll go to my West.
Yeah, you want to? Okay, go ahead. Do your West.
All right. So for my Western predictions, number 1, changing it up, I got to go with the San Antonio Commanders. The Commanders just look like a really well-rounded team to me, with one of the greatest allocated locations in Texas. It could just be the confidence of Commanders GM Daryl Johnson rubbing off on me, but it was infectious, and I'm thinking they're going to go far. The Commanders also have one of the most solidified offenses in the league with Dustin Vaughn, David Cobb, and wide receiver Mikhail McKay. Really like the Commanders. Number 2, you had a really close fight for 2. I thought it had to be the Hotshots. A team that I wasn't very high on from the start, I'll say it now. From their lack of an OC, from their lack of a kicker, to the not-so-great allocated schools. Sorry, Arizona. But I didn't have too much to go on. But Trevor Knight should be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he has some great experienced players around him. Number 3, I've got the Stallions. Despite the Stallions having a great game on the ground against the Express, the Stallions rushed for, again, 155 yards on 38 carries and 2 touchdowns. I had to get the feeling that the Stallions are favoring size over speed in many places, especially like defensive tackles and running back.
That is fair.
And this makes me believe that the Hotshots could outduel them for a real close fight for number 2. And finally, I got to put the San Diego Fleet in there. I'm sorry, our friends who run podcasts on them. But the first overall pick and stud quarterback Josh Johnson's not going to be playing for him this season. I am happy for Josh's success, don't get me wrong, but this personally really makes me think that there's too few star players in the fleet to base success on. I hope they surprise me, don't get me wrong, but as of now, I got them in last in the West.
All right, let's move on to my picks in the East here. Number 1, I have the Atlanta Legends. They have an experienced quarterback, great variety at receiver, a dynamic backfield, and a strong linebacker core that should lead the Legends to be a really, really strong team there. Number 2, I have the Iron. They have a great leader at quarterback, the famous Trent Richardson, and an Alabama-bred O-line and a powerful D-line that's going to make them a force to be absolutely reckoned with. Number 3, I have the Apollos, but once again, this was really tight between the Iron and the Apollos here. A strong defense is going to carry the Apollos to a solid record, but a struggling offensive line might really come back to bite them. And then number 4, I have the Express. Yes, of course, their linebacking core is excellent because of their head coach, Mike Singletary, but with weaknesses in the secondary and running the ball, the Express are probably going to find themselves struggling.
All right, definitely. I disagree with the East for the most part, except for number 1. Number 1, I have the Atlanta Legends, team with the most social media followers. They got a great QB in Aaron Murray, like Vic at OC. It's hard for me to pick against this team because I genuinely think that Vic can put together a great scheme for Murray. With 2 talented running backs and speedy receivers, sheesh, give me the Legends. And the defense is just as experienced, and I think that they're going to be the force to be reckoned with in the East. But here's where we start to change up. Number 2, I got the Orlando Apollos. They're led by a college football Hall of Famer, Steve Spurrier. I said earlier, I think he's going to be one of the greatest coaches in the AAF. And there's no argument that you can say that the Apollos aren't well coached. Garrett Gilbert is certainly a talented QB with plenty of awards coming out of high school. He's got a running back that runs a sub 4.4. And the speed on offense plus the speed on defense will leave them a real tough team to game plan against. And I think that Steve Spurrier is too smart to not use those players in the right way. Number 3, I got the Express. The Express are another team that's not short on talent. Christian Hackenberg was an Elite 11 quarterback out of high school. Zach Stacy had some great NFL years, but I think this team will just barely miss the cut to the Apollos. In their preseason game, they had only rushed for 53 yards, making it hard for me to pick them to be successful based off of their preseason success. And finally, coming in 4th, I have the Iron. The Iron are full of SEC talent with people like Blake Sims, Trent Richardson, and many other Alabama and Auburn players. However, when I think of things that happened, Trent Richardson's ability to find holes at the line was shaky at best for him in the scrimmage, in the NFL. And in the scrimmage against the Hotshots, backup quarterback John Wolford led the Hotshots to, quote, multiple touchdown drives. So maybe that's showing how good Wolford is, or maybe it's showing that the Iron's defense isn't tough as steel.
Whoa, what a pun there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just run through what I think my playoff predictions are going to be here. I think the runner-up in the West is going to be the Commanders. I think the East runner-up is going to be the Iron. I think the champs of the West are going to be the Stallions. The East champs are going to be the Legends. And I'm saying right now that the champ of the entire league is going to be the Legends. Now, of course, this stuff's probably going to change during the season as we see these teams develop. And we are going to be doing more predictions throughout the year. But these are just based on my gut feelings.
Yep. Through the Eastern Conference Finals for me, again, I've got the Legends versus the Apollos. And I think that this will definitely be a close game and a coach's duel. Spurrier versus the new gun Kevin Coyle, but I'm going to give the advantage to Spurrier there. And despite Aaron Murray being a really talented QB, I think Spurrier is going to lead the Orlando Apollos to the first AAF championship. In the Western Finals, I got the Commanders versus the Hotshots, and I think this will be a great game. I think it'll be a real great QB duel between Vaughn and Knight. Even though I strongly believe that both quarterbacks are incredibly talented, I like the talent a lot around Vaughn better. I see players like David Cobb, Mikhail McKay, Nick Rose really stepping up, leading the Commanders to victory. So for the championship for me, I get the Commanders versus the Apollos. And in the championship game, true colors show. And I'm sorry, Spurrier coaching, it won't take you everywhere. I got the Commanders winning a real tight one against the Apollos as of right now.
All right, well, there you have it. You have our roster breakdowns for every single team, as well as our way too early season predictions here. We're just going to run through some quick news again, and then go ahead and wrap this up. So in terms of the app, which I'm sure a lot of people have been wondering about, the release will be between February 2nd and I think the 4th. So It's going to be sometime in that range, so it could come out tomorrow or Monday. In terms of fantasy, The app's supposedly going to offer week-by-week and play-by-play fantasy, but there's going to be no season-long leagues. But I recommend you check out altfantasysports.com, and they offer season-long leagues, which I know you and I plan on getting involved with some of our friends, and we'll be talking about fantasy stuff on the podcast as well.
Definitely.
And then here's what our planned release schedule is for the rest of the year here, so you can know when to get ready for our wonderful voices. Once the season gets underway, we plan on having regular episodes that release Friday before the games on Saturday, and either the Monday or Tuesday after the games on Sunday, depending on what kind of time we have to record, offering analysis and game previews and recaps.
Yep.
And we hope that you stick with us throughout the entire year, as we hope to make this journey with everyone in this brand new league. But until then, peace out and play football.
Thank you for listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at AAF Analyzed, and feel free to contact the show to have your questions featured on a future episode. And don't forget to check out the show on all other platforms such as iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube.